In Israel, grief and anger have reached new heights this weekend. The military confirmed that 6 hostages were killed by their captors in Gaza just as troops were closing in on their location. The news has ignited massive protests and a general strike, marking the most intense domestic pressure on Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu since the war began nearly 4 months ago. Will these protests put pressure on Netanyahu? Will he finally sign the ceasefire deal? Let's have a look. Many Israelis are blaming Netanyahu for the rising number of dead hostages. There is a growing call for a ceasefire agreement to free the remaining hostages, even if it means ending the conflict. For instance, Sunday's demonstrations were the largest show of support for a hostage deal since the 7th of October, when Hamas militants stormed into Israel and kidnapped 250 people. Despite this pressure, Netanyahu has faced calls for a ceasefire from key partners, top security officials, and even the United States. But a deal to end the war remains elusive. Critics claim that Netanyahu prioritizes his political survival over the hostages' fate. His rule depends on the support from ultranationalist parties that oppose ending the war or releasing Palestinian prisoners. These parties, led by Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich and National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir, have threatened to topple the government if Netanyahu agrees to a ceasefire. Meanwhile, the Israeli PM has consistently blamed Hamas for the lack of a deal. However, he remains under pressure as his ongoing corruption trial could leave him vulnerable if he loses power. Netanyahu insists that the military operation in Gaza is the best way to secure the hostages' release. He wants any deal to allow Israeli troops to remain in the 2 strips of land in Gaza, a demand that Hamas has utterly rejected. As the war toll in Gaza increases with tens of thousands killed, Israel's international isolation grows. United States President Joe Biden, a key ally, has criticized Netanyahu's leadership, saying on Monday that the Israeli PM is not doing enough to negotiate a deal. In Israel, protests have been ongoing since the war began, but Sunday's demonstration in Tel Aviv was the largest yet. Hundreds of thousands called for a deal to free the remaining hostages, estimated to be around 100, with 1/3 reportedly dead. Despite this outcry, the protests have not crossed long-standing political boundaries. Sunday's demonstration was largely attended by liberal and secular Israelis who have consistently opposed Netanyahu's leadership. Many of Netanyahu's supporters, particularly in conservative and religious communities, did not join the strike. Meanwhile, a labor court in the country shortened the strike, reducing its impact. Without broader and sustained protests, it's unclear if Netanyahu will feel enough pressure to change his approach. Nevertheless, relatives of the killed hostages hope the protests might push progress on a deal. In an eulogy, the father of Hersh Goldberg Polin, one of the hostages, expressed hope that the recent events might fuel efforts to bring the remaining hostages home.